On Friday night, I was set to plop down here in the office and try out another fine episode of Short Time Shots. By the way, that's the show you're listening to, and it's a look back at the day's scores and more in college wrestling. I'd also be your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer, broadcaster, and announcer, Jason Bryant. But once my wife and I finished having some quiet time watching the most recent episode of Top Chef, I went down to the Mat Talk Online headquarters and realized there were a lot of duels last night. By the time I'd finished logging them into the nation's most robust college wrestling scoreboard, which you can coincidentally find at almanac.mattalkonline.com, it was nearly 2 a.m., and I had to be up early on Saturday to make chocolate chip pancakes for Ruby and Lucy. Sometimes I just don't have the time to push out a Daily Scores episode, and well, basically, because I am my own boss and I'm not paid to do this show, deal with it. Today's different because there were 104 dual meets that I could track on this Saturday. 104. There are a few JUCOs that won't report their results until March, but that's not important right now. It's Saturday, January 27th, 2018, and here's what we had to roll with. We had two stellar top 10 duels, one in the Big Ten and another between former Big 12 rivals. Where to begin? Well, let's just spin that wheel and go with a place that had the bigger crowd, and that would almost assuredly always be Iowa. Number 7, Michigan beat number 4, Iowa 21-17 in front of over 10,000 fans in Carver Hawkeye Arena. Michigan wasn't as explosive as it was a week prior when the Wolverines trounced Minnesota here in Minneapolis. In fact, it seemed like they left a lot of potential bonus points on the table. Credit Iowa for wrestling very tough and nearly pulling out the win in a duel where they were without the services of All-American Michael Kemmerer. Alex Marinelli stayed unbeaten top in Logan Massa, 3-2 at 165 pounds. But Michigan would sweep the last four weights with the biggest win coming at 197 pounds, where Kevin Beasley topped Cash Money Wilkie 6-5. That win set up the dual clinching win by heavyweight Adam Kuhn, who beat Sam Stoll 3-2. Why was Beasley the biggest win? Well, that was the biggest swing match because with no disrespect to Sam Stoll, he's not beating Adam Kuhn ever again. I think he beat him to make the junior world team that year when Kuhn was coming off a football field. Stoll actually took a bronze medal that year at the junior worlds. Anyway, in Stillwater, things were a bit wild and crazy, like Wild and Crazy Kids. Anybody remember that show? Chances are, if you're below the age of 32, you don't. Nickelodeon was awesome back in the day, kind of like MTV. You know, TV sucks now. I love Top Chef, but TV just absolutely sucks unless you're watching wrestling. You can't do that on television, Double Dare, Turkey Television, and speaking of things you're not supposed to do on television, or in this case, Flow Sports, Jaden Ironman of Missouri decided to complicate things even more by pinning two-time national champion Dean Heil at 141 in Missouri's 21-19 win over number 5 Oklahoma State. Combine that with Willie Miklas's modest upset over Preston Weigel at 197, and Brian Smith has his Tigers unbeaten and a clear number 3 in the coaches' poll. That coaches' poll is going to be really weird because Michigan's got that early loss to Lehigh. You know, Iowa's beating Oklahoma State. I mean, it was going to be really crazy if Oklahoma State had beaten Missouri, what to do. But that's up to the voters. I just merely coordinate that. I'm just a humble caveman. I know nothing of your culture. It's going to really make things interesting, too, because Iowa was out without Kemmerer. But big boy sports, right? You play without your starting quarterback and you lose, you're going to drop in the rankings. Let's rank it like a team sport when we're talking about dual meet rankings. I still feel, and this is not a shot at any particular website or service because there are numerous ones that fall under this category. Tournament points are not a good indicator of dual meet strength. And when 75 to 80% of your schedule is dual meets, it is not fundamentally okay to say, well, you're number 5 in the tournament rankings. Well, I remember that year that American was like 5-13 in dual meets and finished 5th in the country, or just missed a trophy, and they were ranked like number 4 in tournament points. It's like, or Binghamton that one year when they had those two guys ranked in the top 5. It was Donnie Vincent and who was the other kid? The Scheidel, the 97-pounder. They were both ranked in the top 5 at one point. So Binghamton, based on tournament points, was like ranked number 8 in the country. They were 2-14 in dual meets. So tournament points. Stop referring to tournament point rankings when you're talking about dual meets. If there's a dual meet ranking, use it. If you don't use the NWCA coaches poll, fine. Use another outlet's dual meet rankings when you're talking about dual meets. It's just aggravating to say, oh yeah, you upset number. No, you didn't. You won 8 out of 10 matches. It wasn't an upset. Anyway, that's a soapbox. That's a rant. Again, that's not directed at any particular outlet in particular, but redundancy like crazy, but just use dual meat rankings when talking about dual meats. It makes more sense. Number 10, Virginia Tech got quite a fight from Duke, but a fall by Zach Zavatsky at 184 pounds gave the Hokies enough breathing room to improve to 2-0 in the ACC and 12-2 overall. Zavatsky has scored 10 straight bonus point victories. He also helped the Hokies knock off Lehigh on Friday night. Cornell won 2 matches on Saturday. The Big Red beat Harvard 35-3 and Brown 27-9. So they beat the Crimson and they beat Brown. They're going all over the place with these colors. The 2 wins gave Cornell 80 straight dual meet victories within the Ivy League. Freddie Stroker, that's Freddie with 1D, saw his first action in the Cornell lineup. Officially, that is. He split matches on the day, beating Harvard's Brock Wilson, but losing to 500th year senior Justin Stodmeyer of Brown. What's also of interest is Max Dean of Cornell beat his cousin Cannon Dean of Harvard 3-0. Last year, Max's older brother, yes, the Gabe Dean, beat Cannon. Must be rather uncomfortable and an uncomfortable silence when they have to sit at the kids' table on holidays up in Michigan. Ryder has emerged as the top dog, or at least in this case, Horsch, in EWL after the 19th-ranked Bronx beat 23rd-ranked Lock Haven 22-12. There's only one match you care about here. It's at 165 pounds, right? Well, Chance Marsteller of Lock Haven continued his climb up in the rankings, beating 2-time All-American Chad Walsh 8-4. Big win for Chance there. The only other ranked team in action was number 22 Wyoming, which beat Fresno State 40-6. Let's just get this one out of the way. Dewey Kruger is the Jose Oquendo of college wrestling. Don't know who Jose Oquendo is? Again, if you're under the age of 32, you probably don't. Look it up. Or don't. The guy was the ultimate utility man in baseball, had a long career mostly with the St. Louis Cardinals. He could play every position, and over the course of his major league career, he did. And when I say every position, I mean he pitched, he could play catcher, he played every position, like positional position in Major League Baseball. Last week, Kruger weighed in 157 pounds and won by fall in a dual meet at 197. That happened on Saturday. He got another victory, this time at 184 pounds. If Missouri were able to borrow him, I'm sure Brian Smith would throw him out there at heavyweight tonight instead of Wyatt Coling, who is normally a 184-pounder, bumping up to heavyweight. Other things in Division I that you should be paying attention to. Binghamton improved to 8-4 overall, and they stand 5-0 in the EIWA, which is technically in first place because Cornell is only 3-0 in conference. But since 5-0 is greater than 3-0, yeah, BU Bearcats standing in first place. Today, the Bearcats beat Penn 19-18 and Drexel 21-12 to complete the cheesesteak sweep of Philly schools, which are separated by about a block. That's one hell of a job interim head coach Kyle Borshoff has done since taking over the program earlier this season. Sometimes when you have a coaching change during the season that's not exactly the most celebrated, for example, that can pretty much destroy a program. This loss pretty much also seals Drexel's fate from ever getting ranked this season. Yeah, because as you look at the transitive or the distributed property, who cares? Whatever. You know the property I'm talking about. A beats B, B beats C, and C can beat A. Yeah. Well, Binghamton also does have a loss to SIU Edwardsville this year. Not really going to help Drexel's case of staying in that ranking discussion. The Dragons did wrestle with that Austin DeSanto at 133 pounds, but what were we saying earlier about wrestling with who you got? Yeah, that happens. Oh, by the way, in case you were listening to the last episode, that Bell's Hop Slam I was talking about the other night, yeah, that sucks. Pine tree juice. I got about 2 swigs into it and it's like, nope, you can keep your double Imperial Death Star IPAs. I like some hops, but mother of all that is holy, that thing tasted like the Stone Cat Christmas tree urine stuff that the guy was talking about. But I guess some people like that. I ain't them people. Hofstra's been catching a little bit of heat, but guess what? The Pride today picked up a 22-17 win over Buffalo after falling behind 14-0 early on. Dennis Papadopoulos, still the best hair product game in college wrestling. Navy won the All-Academy Championships hosted in Charleston, South Kakalaki by the Citadel. The Mids won 6 individual titles, and Jadine Bernstein was the outstanding wrestler of the event. Army West Point was second. That wraps up the Division I recap, and all those scores and more, again, at almanac.mattalkonline.com. And speaking of Division I, you know that thing I've talked about in the past, the most awesome, stellar, bodacious, tubular, radical dude Division One preview guide? Yeah, it's available for pre-order, and you can do that by going to MattTalkOnline.com/FanGuide18. Use the offer code podcast. Save yourself $5. Trust me, it is the one thing you need going into Cleveland this year. You don't need pants. You don't need shirts. You need this digital preview guide. In other places around the country, Grandview won its 64th duel in a row. The Vikings beat second-ranked Missouri Valley on Friday, which was number 1 versus number 2, before finishing up the conference duel schedule with a 31-16 win over number 14 Baker. Grandview hasn't lost a duel meet since 2013. They've lost 9 duels in school history. This is the 10th year of the program. Ashland went 6-0 at the Midwest Duels, hosted by Belmont Abbey. Belmont Abbey is in North Carolina, not exactly Midwest. 4 of those wins did come on Saturday. Bellarmine earned its first 2 conference victories in school history. What's interesting here is that Bellarmine, which is in Louisville, Kentucky, or as the locals say, Louisville. Say that with me one more time. Louisville. Yeah, they started a wrestling program by absorbing what was left of the program at St. Catherine's, which was an NAIA school that closed 2 years ago. So hat tip to the Knights, who beat Truman State and Drury. Tiffin also picked up 4 wins on the day, beating Queens, Belmont Abbey, Coker, and Limestone. Western State Colorado upset number 10 Central Oklahoma 26-18 in a single duel, while in Division III we had multiple wins registered by a slew of teams as quads were aplenty. Centenary, Johnson & Wales, the College of New Jersey, New York University, Gettysburg, and York, the one in Pennsylvania, had the most successful duel days. Earlier this month, the namesake of the Pete Wilson Invitational, former Wheaton College coach Pete Wilson, passed away. The tournament named in his honor is like the Southern Scuffle or Midlands of Division III. On Saturday, that tournament finished up, and Messiah put 5 wrestlers in the finals and outdistanced second-place Mount Union to claim the team title. Most impressive performances were turned in at 125 pounds by champion Carlos Fuentes of Wheaton, who beat Baldwin Wallace's Chris Doyle 12-3 in the finals. Mount Union's Jared James knocked off 2016 Division III champion Ben Swar 6-4 in the finals at 174, and UW La Crosse's Wesley Schultz pinned Messiah All-American Kyle Kozer in a minute in the 197-pound final. The tournament also showed great balance as 8 different teams won individual titles, led by Messiah's 3. Steve Maloney at 149, Kevin Edwards at 157, and Jeff Hanacki at 165. That's all I've got for you today. It's Saturday. Oh, wait. By the time I started this and by the time I ended it, it's now Sunday. So that is your short time shots for January 27, 2018. Reminder, the largest college wrestling scoreboard in the country, available at almanac.mattalkonline.com. You can also buy the Division I preview guide. The pre-order it now. Yeah, the pre-order it now. Pre-order it now. mattalkonline.com/fanguide18. And if this is your first time listening to either the Short Time Wrestling Podcast proper or just the Short Time Shots, which is kind of a sub-show, but it's kind of part of the Short Time feed, yeah, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We're not allowed to call it iTunes anymore. That's all I got for you now. I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time for Short Time. The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.